when I started learning new thought ideas that someday I would be a minister. And the person teaching me said, well, nobody's ever going to hire you, so you better start a church of your own. So I went, okay, I'll start one in Toronto. And the day came when, with $40 and a dream, I came to Toronto to do just that, to start a church. And it happened. I didn't know how. I didn't have everything in place. I came with $40 and a dream. I didn't have a place to live. I had a one-way plane ticket. I didn't know anybody who lived in Toronto. But the dream was strong and powerful, and I followed it. That's the opportunity that's there for each one of us, is to take the dream and follow it. I was watching a movie on Walt Disney's life, and after his bankruptcy, his dream was still alive and strong. And although everything seemed to be mounting against him, I think we can say today that he was fairly successful in his endeavors. When he went to LA with $40 and a dream, it still took some time before his success and before he discovered Mickey, good old Mickey Mouse. Who knew a little mouse could lead to such an empire? A little cartoon drawing that everybody said, forget it, you can't do that. Go get a real job. How many times have you heard that your dreams aren't realistic, that somehow they should be different? We should be realistic and go to university and study whatever they say is the job that is most likely to get you hired. And we wonder why our world is in the state that it is in, when all of us tend to be living lives of quiet desperation, putting in time somewhere. There's a lot of people who are working at jobs that they really loathe. There are people doing things that they don't enjoy or don't believe in that cause them to change their sense of value and purpose because I have to do what my boss says. And yet somewhere deep within there's a desire, there's a dream, but how to do it is not maybe present in our consciousness. So I'm here to say that every heart has a dream. Every heart has a desire. Every person has a little something special to them that is their gift. And it is our responsibility to give it to the world. In the Bible, it talks about the fact that if we don't live the gifts that we have, they'll kill us. And isn't that what happens, that we get depressed and upset and frustrated because we're not doing our heart's desire? But if we live our heart's desire, we will be free. The interesting thing is that as we begin to live from a place of joy, a place of love, a place of really honoring who and what we are, we begin to see what's possible for us in the world around us. We begin to see future as a brighter experience. There's a sense of gratitude in all that we do when we can begin to move past the ideas of limitation and restriction that have been placed on us, not by us. We might be enforcing it, but oftentimes those ideas came to us long before, through the way we were raised as children, the school system that we attended, maybe even the churches that we went to, suggested to us that suffering is something that should be our experience. That you got to work hard to earn a living. It's interesting, when you're doing what you love, when you do what it is that God gave you to do, you will never work another day in your life. When you're living your dream and your possibility, when you're living from your greatness, when you're living from that inspired place of possibility, you may put in long hours, but you will never have to work. Because there's a joy that comes from doing what we're meant to do, what's ours to do. And it doesn't mean there won't be a mountain to climb or a river to cross or a moment of heartache. But in the moment that we remember, in the moment that we have faith, in the moment that we praise God for the journey that we're on and for the insights that it's giving us, in those moments we begin to realize our dream and our possibility. And it is in those moments that we begin to fulfill the mission that we were given. This journey of life and living requires great faith. And I know, I pray with people often, and one thing I hear fairly consistently is, I really want more control in my life. So what do we have control over? We have control over one thing. We don't have control over the weather, unfortunately. We don't have control over other people, although we might want to. We don't have control over the economy, the political reign, but we do have control over the way we think. The teaching of New Thought is one of what you think about, you bring about, what you focus on will be yours. In Genesis, God said, whatever you name a thing, that's what it will be for you. Now that is a really important scripture. And it's one that we need to take to heart today, because what do I name today? It's a bad day because it's cold outside. Is it a bad day? No, it's just a day. We need to begin to remember that God or good is everywhere. We need to remember that it is everywhere. So the snow, the cold, the sun, all of it is God, which means all of it is good. So we need to reframe our thinking and recognize that what I think about, I bring about, what I focus on comes into my life. If I take my dream and I focus on my dream, the way for it to become manifest will reveal itself. But I must have faith. You must have faith that your dream is yours for a reason. And someone else might come along and go, oh, I have that dream too. Because doesn't that happen? That happened to Walt Disney. People came along, they took his ideas, they took ownership of his ideas and left him with nothing. Took his staff and left him with next to nothing. And what did he do? He found a new idea. Not different than animation, but he found Mickey Mouse. A little mouse. A little cartoon mouse that led to an empire. In the moment of your great despair, in the moment when a wall is in front of you, it doesn't mean stop. It doesn't mean look backwards. Remember Lot and his wife? Yeah. Leaving Sodom and Gomorrah, and what did God say? Don't look back. What does she do? Look back. How often do we look back? I can't take a new step forward because I tried it once and I tripped, so I'm never going to do it again. Imagine a baby who starts walking and falls down and goes, oh, well, I tried. None of us would be walking. I don't know who would push us in our little chairs, but we would have a problem getting around. You see, we have to recognize that there's desire within us, and that desire is for life. It's not necessarily about being the best minister or the best architect or the best lawyer or president or prime minister or garbage collector. It's not about that. It's about finding desire in our hearts that motivates us to live. To live. That's what we're here for, is to live. So I invite you to ask yourself every moment of every day, am I alive? Am I in my life, or am I living back there? Have I crystallized myself into a pillar of salt because I'm afraid? And because I look at the past all the time, and what I find back there is the impossibility of life. And so I stop. To live the dream that's in your heart requires movement. It requires motion. It requires faith and passion and purpose. And it requires that we continually look forward. It requires that we live in the now moment, because frankly, it is the only place where we can create. Now. Now. You see, tomorrow doesn't exist. When I wake up Monday morning, what will it be? It will be now. But if I'm focusing on what happened Saturday night, I don't have a lot to offer because I'm not present. And if I'm not present, I'm powerless. And it's the same thing if I'm thinking too far into the future. If I'm thinking about next Sunday and what I'm going to be doing next Sunday, I can't be focused on what's happening right now. I can't listen to the voice of God now, because that's the only time God talks to me is now. And that's the only time God talks to you is now. So what are you doing now? Stop you thinking about lunch. I heard that. We tend to forget the power of our thinking, the power of our words. We forget the importance of language. We forget the importance of our thinking. In the New Thought teaching, you catch the word thought, right? New thought. New Thought Christianity is not about something fancy that was just discovered today. It's about this age-old wisdom that reminds us that my thinking creates my reality, that what's in my mind is going to show up in my experience. And I might not know everything that's in my mind, right? Because we were raised by people. Most of us were raised by people. We were raised by people who meant well, but maybe didn't understand the power of their words or the power of their actions. And maybe they didn't know to instill in us that we are powerful, creative beings living a remarkable existence, that we're created perfect, whole, and complete. I mean, how many of you were told as a kid that you were bad? How many times did someone say no to you? Just when you were having the most fun of all. Like, I remember screaming and yelling, jumping around, having a blast, and my parents going, shut up! But I was having fun, I was living my passion, my dream, my focus, I was having a blast. My parents didn't think so with their hangover, or whatever was going on with them that day. You see, sometimes we have created within ourselves some limitations, some fears and doubts and worries that prevent us from living our dream and our passion, because we've received messages that doing that was wrong and bad. That somehow girls are not supposed to be loud. Whoops. I forgot that one very early on and have never really gotten there. You see, this journey to live your dream, it's not about one dream, it's more about a quality of existence. It's about listening to the voice of God moment by moment, day by day, and responding to what it is we hear. Now, oftentimes we get this great inspiration, but then our mind, our ego conscious mind, goes, yeah, but let me tweak that. And then we wonder why, as we're moving along, that this great dream that we were given somehow isn't manifesting. We're not seeing it in our reality, and we don't know why. I mean, why is God failing me all the time? And it's because in our minds, we have decided somewhere along the way that we know better. We look at the world out here and we go, well, let me just temper my dream a little bit. Let me tweak it. Let me shift it. Let me move it a little so it makes more sense to me based on my belief system, the way I was raised, the current economic status, everything going on in the world. I mean, where does it make any good sense at all for somebody to move to Toronto without a job and with $40? I mean, that sounds like a recipe for living on the street. But not if that's the message God gave you. Because the way will be made possible. We have to look at how we create. In the Bible it says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Every day, every moment, we must renew the mind. We must look at our thoughts and our process, our journey. We need to look at how we're doing life. Am I living or am I putting in time? Am I punching a clock or am I expanding consciousness that I might fully reveal Christ through me? Every day and every moment we're asking those questions of ourselves and deciding whether or not we can fully accept that I am one with God. We forget it all the time. It's why we come to church. It's why we take classes, so that we can be reminded. It's easy to forget. You know, we hear about a murder in the city and we forget because we think God's not there. But God is. A hurricane happens and it's like, whoa, that's so terrible. God's not there, but God is there. There's a giant fire and we call it bad and wrong, but the thing is that our scope of vision is quite limited. We look at another person who may have a challenge in some area and we might call them bad and wrong. But the truth is we don't know. We don't know them. We don't know their life, their purpose. We don't know where they're going or what it is that they're teaching us in any given moment. The law of attraction is something that many of you are probably familiar with because it's been talked about so much over the number of years that I've been studying metaphysics. And the law of attraction is that I will bring into my life who I am and what I think about. I'm not going to bring into my life what I want. So I want you to hear that. I will not bring into my life what I want, and neither will you. And the reason for that is when we talk about wanting, the universe gives us what? Wanting. You see, the universe is very exact in how it responds to us. It responds according to our beliefs. It responds according to our thinking. If I want something, it means I don't have it. And if in my mind I don't have it, if my mind is saying I don't have it, the universe goes as you wish. Now this is a very fine line, and it's one that's kind of challenging to wrap our head around sometimes, because we go, yeah, but I want my life to be whatever. And I remember a story, it was written by Greg Brayton in one of his books, and he talked about being in, I think in California somewhere, where there had been no rain for a long time. And so he went with an indigenous friend of his to pray for rain. And they hiked a great long distance up the hill, and they found this kind of sacred place of stones and stuff, and the friend he was traveling with went into the middle of it and took his shoes off and stood in the middle of this circle of stones. And he was there for a little bit, and then he came out. And Greg said, I thought we were going to pray for rain. And his friend said, if we pray for rain, we're letting the universe know we don't have it, and we won't get it. But he said, I stood in the center of those stones, and I felt the mud between my toes. And I felt the rain pouring over my body. And I realized rain in that moment. He said, we must pray rain, not pray for rain. So when we're looking at our lives, we want to look at what it is that we desire in our heart, and are we willing to pay the price to have that desire fulfilled? Are we willing to show up day by day and moment by moment to live that vision, to live that desire? Are we prepared to surrender all that we might fulfill the dream within our hearts? That's what we're being called to do. That's what we're being called to do. Moses thought, what? You want me to lead the people? I'm an old man. There are many examples in the Bible of people getting a message. Imagine for a moment Joseph being told, look, she's a good girl, marry her anyway, and by the way, you're going to have a son. Name him Jesus, would you? You see, today we would go, wait a minute, whose kid is that anyway? Accepting the fact that in the Bible, everywhere, if we just take a look through it, what we discover is that there are many opportunities where people were suggested to do something, but they didn't know how, or it didn't seem reasonable. You know what, it probably wasn't reasonable for me to move to Toronto with $40 and a one-way plane ticket to Hamilton. That might not seem reasonable, but you know what, it worked out pretty darn good. Had I asked all the questions, had I waited for every little thing to be in perfect order so I could control every possible outcome, likely I'd still be in Calgary. So almost 19 years later, here I stand. This journey that we're on is a journey of fulfilling our life. Not the one our parents want for us, but the one that God gave us when we were born. Every one of us has it. Every one of us has a little something within us that it is our responsibility to give to the world, and the world will be a better place as a result of us giving it. Every one of us has it. And if you think you don't, I invite you just to take time in the silence to surrender completely whatever it is you think you know about life, and to open your mind so wide that you become teachable. And that in that moment of being teachable, inspiration comes from within and grows inside of you. So strong that you begin to take steps in the direction of that dream. We all have a dream. We all have a dream. We all have something we do that no one else can do. Imagine for a moment if Wayne Dyer in his life just went to a bookstore and went, oh, look at all these books on spirituality. There's no point in me writing one, or many. Or Marianne Williamson sitting back going, it's been done. You know, of course, the Miracles was written, and, you know, what's there for me to say? Imagine for a moment that Oprah went, I'm just a poor little girl from the South. There's no hope for my life. Let me just sit back and accept my lot in life. Imagine Martin Luther King Jr. going, it's a lot of work. I think I'll just stay home with my kids today. There is a price to pay to live the life God gave us to live, and it's important that we live it, that we pay the price, that we stand in this moment and show up for who we are. For every life is a great life. Every life is essential and important to the unfolding of the universe. Every single life matters. It is essential that each one of us find our voice, find that thing within us that really wants to be expressed. We must give it away or it will kill us, as the Bible says. So what is it in you? What little thing in you is creating that itch, that desire to move forward? What is it in you that's pushing or pulling you into something bigger and brighter? What is it in you that keeps calling your attention to it? Because there's something. Guarantee, if you're on this side of the grass, there's something for you to do. But are you ready to do it? Are you willing to do it? Are you willing to stand in this moment and go, yes, I am the I am. You know, Jesus said to his disciples, who do they say I am? You see, people will talk about you all the time, if you're interesting enough. That doesn't mean they know you. Doesn't mean they have a clue about who you are, what you are, where you're headed, what you've done or not done. They're just, you know, speaking from their own projected expression of who they think you should be or think you are. Who is it that people say you are? What's more important is who do you say you are? I am the I am. Repeat that.
I am the I am.
Thank you. You see, we're not husband and wife, we're not mother and child, we're not president and vice president, we are not any of those things. We are the divine made manifest here and now. We are spiritual beings awakening to that truth. Each and every moment we have an opportunity to realize who we are and whose we are. It is when we do that that we begin to experience a life more filled with freedom and possibility. A life that inspires us to move forward, to go bigger. I was reading on Facebook a little while ago about my ex-father-in-law who's now in his 80s. I think he just celebrated his 80th birthday actually. And for his birthday he decided that it would be a really good idea to go skydiving, bungee jumping, and zip lining. Because, you know, if not now, when? And his children are kind of like, say, what, Dad? you did what? That's a man who is alive. That is someone who's saying, oh, I have an idea. Let me try this. Because sometimes we get an idea and we go, I'm too old. I don't have enough education. Oh, I live on the wrong side of the world. Oh, I speak the wrong language. Whatever. We come up with excuses, don't we? What we want to do instead is awaken our minds and hearts that we might fulfill the vision that God has for us. In the moment that we praise God, in the moment that we look at our hardship and look it in the eye and go, you are nothing. What's real in my life is the power and presence of the mighty force of God. And as I recognize that and live from that and begin to celebrate and rejoice in that, what happens is I begin to experience a new reality. For anyone who is struggling, for anyone who is facing a challenge right now that you're not sure how to shift or change or alter, I invite you to take Evan's class on Thursday night. And for those of you who are streaming, it's on Zoom as well, so you can stream it. Thursday nights at 6:45. I invite you to do that because there's something in his message and in the message of Fillmore. The book is called Christian Healing. And the book is all about redefining, or at least the first chapter is redefining what it is we believe God is. And that's the question for us, isn't it? Because we've been trained to think of a God out there somewhere bestowing a blessing on us if we're good. If we do everything right, according to what and whom? According to my mom. If I do everything according to my mom, then God will bless me. If I do everything according to the police department and the laws that have been laid down by the land, then God will bless me. No. The thing that you are meant to do is within you, deep within you. You know what it is, no one else does. No one can tell you what's right for you, so stop asking them. Your best friend hasn't got a clue. Is he right for you? She don't know. You don't know. But you do. In your heart of hearts, you always know. In your heart of hearts, if you will listen, you will be given the answers. In your heart of hearts, all that you have need of will be made clear. And if you will listen to that guidance that comes, if you will listen to that still small voice within you, You will be guided into right action at all times because you will be defined from your faith, not your fear. You see, it's up to us. We're not to blame for the hardships in our life or the suffering that we may have. We're not to blame for that. However, we did create it. But we may have created it unknowingly. But now that you know, everything in life is created from the inside out. And if we begin to take the word God, and some people have trouble with the word God because they've got a preconceived notion of what that is, like Reverend Evans says, let's use the word good instead. And so if I'm willing to see good everywhere, it begins to change how I respond to the world around me, and I can begin to move out of my fear, my anxiety, my regrets, my guilt, my shame, whatever, and go, no. In every moment I've done the best that I can. In every moment I've lived to the fullest that I was able in that moment. So now I know more, I will do more. I know better now, so I will do better now. You see, each one of us has a choice about what we do with the events of our lives. Pain's going to happen, no question, but suffering is optional. You see, I can have pain in one moment and feel fine the next, but if I keep thinking about the pain that was, suffering is going to be my result. You see, suffering is in the mind, it's not in the body. Suffering is a thought that I hold about injustice or regret. Suffering comes from my thinking, not from my experience. I may have a bad experience and then move on from it like it never happened. And someone else may have the same bad experience and carry it with them for the rest of their life, suffering every moment, living in absolute hell for the rest of their existence. Day by day, falling deeper and deeper into a hole because that thing happened and it destroyed me. The words we speak have power. When you name a thing, that's what it will be for you. So we take a look at our experiences and we recognize them as opportunities to grow, to expand, and to live more fully. We take every experience as a joyful, loving opportunity for me to realize something bigger, brighter, and better in my life and in my world. I have the ability to rethink any situation. The interesting thing about the mind is that the things that we think aren't necessarily true, but they're defining how we live. So what if we stopped judging and criticizing all the things in the world around us and instead began to look for the good? What if we began to look for the good in everything? What if we redefined our life and went, you know what, it was all good, and I know it was all good because look where I am today. I am here today in this moment as the person that you're currently looking at and listening to because of the journey that brought me here. Now there were hills to climb, ditches to pull myself out of. But the truth is, it only defines my life if I choose for it to do so. Because there's other people who've had similar experiences as mine, and they're going on happy as can be. Having a great experience, having a great life, going, that was in the past, let me move forward. We are created in the image and likeness of God. We live, move, and have our being within God. God is all there is. God is all there is. I want you to get that. God is the pew you're sitting in, the computer you're watching this streaming on. God is the voice that you hear when you're quiet and still and all alone. That still small voice inside that says, yes, you can. And we want to recognize that voice, which is a little bit different from the one that goes, oh, you're such an idiot. You're so ugly, so old, so stupid. That voice, if you listen carefully, is one that's coming from your history. It might have been something someone said to you and it's being regurgitated. It might have been something you saw on the news or in a magazine, but it's not who you are. So I invite you today to renew your mind. I invite you today to choose life. And that means in every single moment looking for the good. You know, we've heard the phrase that within every dark cloud is a silver lining. It's actually platinum. It's very valuable. I invite you to see the good. I don't know if it was Emma Curtis Hopkins or Mary Baker Eddy. Anyway, one of the women from the 1800s who was teaching these wonderful New Thought ideas demanded to see the good in every bad situation. Every situation that came along that could be called bad or wrong or whatever, she goes, no, I demand to see the good in this. I know it's there and I demand to see it. And when we begin to retrain our mind and our thinking so that we make a demand on the universe that good is right here where I am and I see it now, I experience it now, I realize it now, and I'm willing to live fully from this awareness, we begin to shift our lives and our perspective. We begin to experience life in a brand new way, and we begin to live from a place of absolute possibility, joy, and love. Within you, there is a dream. And to ensure that it occurs and is fulfilled in your life requires that you remember it always, and that every day, in every way, you move yourself toward it. That means living fully. When the fears come up, release them to the faith and power of God. Recognize good. Realize good. Not some of the time, but all of the time. Allow yourself to live your dream. And if you don't know how, it doesn't matter, because how is God's job. Namaste.
This is called River of Dreams. Feel free to snap along with us if you'd like. I go walking in the middle of the, 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 I go walking in the middle of the night.
Middle of the night.
I go walking in my sleep.
Walking in my sleep.
From the mountains of fame.
Mountains of fame.
To a river so deep.
River so deep.
I must be searching for something.
Searching for something.
Something sacred I long.
Sacred I long.
But the river is wide.
River is wide.
And it's too hard to cross.
Too hard to cross.
And even though I know the river is wide,
I walk down every evening, I stand by the shore.
I try to cross to the opposite side so I can finally find what I've been looking for.
In the middle of the night,
Middle of the night.
I go walking in my sleep.
Walking in my sleep.
Through the valley of fear.
Valley of fear.
To a river so deep.
River so deep.
And I've been searching for something.
Searching for something.
Something sacred I lost.
Sacred I lost.
Something I will never lose.
I never lose.
Something somebody stole.
Something somebody stole. I don't know
why I go walking at night, but I'm tired and I don't want to walk anymore. I hope it doesn't take the rest of my life until I find what it is that I've been looking for.
In the middle of the night, I go walking in my sleep. Through the jungle of doubt. To a river so deep. I know I'm searching for something, something so undefined, that it can only be seen by the eyes of the blind. In the middle of the night,
I go walking in the middle of the, 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 I go walking in
the middle of the night, I go walking in my sleep, through the desert of truth, to a river so deep, we all let in the ocean, we all start in the stream, we're all carried along by the river of dreams. In the middle of the night,
in the middle of the, I go walking 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 in the middle of the night.